Okay. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. It's quite cool, isn't it? Yes. Well. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Rabbi shrah li sadri wa yassir li amri. Wahlul 'uqdatan min lisani yafqahu qawli. Let's refresh what we did a little bit last time and how we moved from this topic. The topic remains stable for us, and you'll find that the work is in progress, so I'm always looking and trying to improve it. And that's one of the reasons why I did not let Umar, send you the PowerPoints. He asked me to do that, because it's still work in progress. I need to perfect it a little bit. I need to change things and make it clearer. So it will take, but at the end of our course, I will authorize sending you the PowerPoints. So the Quran is a collection of moral teachings. It's a very different way of looking at the Quran. Usually you and I are used to look at the Quran as Masdar al-Ahkam. It's a source of religious rulings that govern our life. What we learn from the Quran is not only that. We learn from the Quran the preparation to handle ahkam. If you just pray or just get married or so many of these things or leave an inheritance for your family, what you need to do is capture the spirit behind them. Ibadat are meant to generate in you apparatus. I'll try to explain that. This is the apparatus where your conscience begins to talk to you. It's very important to talk to your conscience. Allow it to speak to you when nobody else can speak to you, and that's the voice of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Conscience is. In Farsi we say zamir or wijdan. These terms in Arabic they say sarira, something that is, hidden inside you. But I mentioned conscience last week. What I'm suggesting now is that ahkam in the Quran are supposed to lead you to become morally strong, to have a good sense of right and wrong. If you do the ibadat and you don't have the sense of right and wrong, you might be praying in a place that doesn't belong to you. You might be wearing clothes that were stolen. And every aspect of it, you can't make wuzu in the water that doesn't belong to you. You haven't paid the bills. You can't do that. You must pay your electricity bills, your water bills, even if you are in this country. It's not only Islamic world. Because these are moral obligations that you fulfill as a citizen of a country. Becoming a citizen is also part of the iman. Muwatin, watan, hubbul watan. Wherever you live, the Prophet ﷺ was asked, what is watan? He said, where you have a home, somebody waiting for you. How beautiful. You have a home, somebody is waiting for you. So home is not necessarily another part of the world. Home is here where somebody is waiting for you. This is the sign of love that you have, affection. And therefore it is very important to keep in mind that ibadat or ahkam in the Quran are actually collection of moral teachings. Look at this ayah. Inna salata tanha anil fahsha'i wal munkar. Salat is supposed to save you from shameful deeds. So if you're doing the salat, and if you tell lies, you tell yourself, my God, I was just praying, and now I'm telling lies. It brings to you an awareness that is very rare. In world religions, my knowledge about the world religions, I've taught Eastern tradition and Western traditions. I find that many of the Abrahamic traditions share some of the common concerns in spirituality and morality. If you look at the teachings of Christ, Jesus Christ, in the New Testament, you'll be surprised to see that he is teaching a religion that should do away with appearances. Sometimes you do something in order to show others that you are doing it. And that's not what religion is all about. That will breed into you nifaq, hypocrisy. You're doing only to get the approval of the people. That's not good. You do it lillah. You do it with the niyyah that I'm going to please none other but God. This is what I call the ahkam that is based on moral requirements. You have to be first moral and then come to ahkam. Are you getting it?
Can you define ahkam a little better?
Do I?
Can you define ahkam?
Ahkam is the rulings in the Quran, hukm.
Okay.
The Quran says, do this, don't do this. If you have money, give just to this one. If you have, to perform salah, this is how you do it. Ahkam is all the rulings of the Sharia in the Quran. What I'm now moving you towards is something that you not heard. Sharia is thoroughly based on moral presuppositions. From the very small thing that you learn, you must make a niyyah. You're going for Umrah, you're going for Hajj, you must make sure that all your money is clean. How do I make my money clean? By morally distributing it where it is necessary. I must be taking care of the poor people before I go to Hajj. I have neighbors in my neighborhood who have no money to eat food, and I'm going for Hajj? No. I can go for Hajj when I have attended to my duty, that is a moral duty, but it's also hukm. Inna salat, in all the salat, aqimu salat wa atu zakat. You are taught that yes, do the salat, but you also must give the zakat. Most of us don't do the zakat. I'm sorry, I'm also part of you. So when I do criticize, I'm also criticizing myself. Most of us don't pay attention to the rights of the people on us. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, I told you last week that only 1/10 of religion is Allah's. 9/10 is how I treat you. All the ibadat, put it together, it's 1/10 of religion. All the muamalat, how I treat you, what should I give you, how should I employ you, how should I work in an office, how should I walk, how should I drive, all this is part of 9/10 of religion. So 9/10 of religion is civility. 9/10 of religion is taking care of your neighbors. 9/10 of religion is to bring up your children. All these things are part of the responsibility. In other words, taqwa, I mentioned to you last time, taqwa is the word that leads us to understand spiritual ethics. If anybody asks you what is taqwa, usually you will see the translation in the Quran, it is fear of God. Ittaqullah. Fear God. Taqwa. Taqwa then is usually translated as the fear of God. No, taqwa means always to remember that if nobody is watching me, God is watching me. That's taqwa. The moment you become aware of the divine presence in your life, that's the time you've attained the level of taqwa. The highest level of taqwa is when you are able to see things so clearly in future. It's there for you to discover. Let's move on. I'm just revising. I'm just revising our objectives in the class so that you remember why are we here. What are we trying to do? To enhance ethical and spiritual content of the Quran. What I said just now. To learn to read the Quran for moral, religious action guide. You remember what I taught to you about action guide? Who remembers that? What is an action guide?
How you're supposed to behave.
That's right. It is a plan of action. A plan of action. So I made a distinction between religious action guide, moral action guide, and what we call the legal action guide. Religious action guide is everything you do is to please God. That's religious action guide. Moral action guide is when I relate you to myself. I say, you are my sister, you are my daughter. Then I need to take care of you. I have responsibility. You can't claim anything, any relationship, without recognizing responsibility. You are my mother, you are my father, you are my neighbor, you are my fellow citizen. You see, in every aspect, Islam is so broad, so broad. When you look at Judaism, it's thoroughly nationalistic. You have to be Jew in order for you to be saved on the day of judgment. Because Banu Israel are the favorites of God. According to their belief, they are a chosen community. They are chosen people. If you look at Christianity, you cannot enter paradise if you are attached to this world. It's a world-denying religion. Don't look at the Christians around you. Christianity, the way New Testament is teaching, no rich man will ever be able to enter paradise. And if a camel can go through the eye of a needle, then the rich man will go to paradise. That's impossible. What does Islam say? You must live in the world as if you are going to live forever. And prepare yourself in such a way that when you leave, you say, Alhamdulillah, I left well.
How would you contrast Buddhism with the 90% of...
Yes. Buddhism is also denial of the world. So we have world-embracing religions, world-denying religions. World-embracing religions include Islam and Judaism. But Christianity is world-abandoning. He said, no, you don't connect yourself with the world. Otherwise, you will never be saved. But here in Buddhism, it's mystical path. How do you achieve nirvana? How do you reach that point? So Bodhisattva is, if you go to the Buddhist temple, it's organized in layers. So you start your journey here, and then you go up, and up, until you achieve the nirvana, the peace. In Hinduism also, there are different Bhakti Hinduism and so many other areas. In other words, in the world religions, there is always this concern to move you towards your spiritual goals. What Islam says, spirituality alone does not prove your membership. You need to be morally aware. You can't become a sadhu. You can't become a bhakta, go away from the world. No, you must live in this world and learn how to live in this world. And when you go in this world, people will remember you. What a difference. That's what I mean. To learn the Quran for moral religious action guide, to identify the pillars of human character formation, we are going to deal with some of them, and to explore practical aspects of moral character building. Practical aspects. I like us in this class to be aware that we are not simply engaged in ethical discourse. We also want to find a plan of action. What exactly should we do? How should we improve ourselves? What is it that we are required to do? So, any questions? And we started with this, understanding Quranic terminology. And the text that we used in last week was وَنُنَزِّلُ مِنَ الْقُرْآنِ مَا هُوَ شِفَاءٌ وَرَحْمَةٌ لِلْمُؤْمِنِينَ. We have revealed in this Quran something that will heal you, give you peace in life, and will also be mercy of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It's a very lofty ideal that the Quran says. We will reveal min al-Qur'ani bima huwa shifa'un wa rahmatun lil mu'mineen. You need to have faith in the Quran, otherwise you can't achieve the goal. So we begin with the faith. The faith generates in you the confidence that you need. The actual meaning of Iman is to have confidence. When you feel secured. When do you have confidence? I'm secured in this building. Nobody can hurt me. I'm protected from all the dangers of life. That's when you say, I have the Iman. You see how I'm interpreting the Iman? Iman is something that generates in you a sense of security. Amn. In Farsi we do say amn aman. The sources of creating peace for yourself. Khulq and khuluq, we discussed the natural disposition, and I will come to that. There are two conditions, good and bad, that appear in human personality. It is also regarded as an inner phase of human person. What we are learning about spiritual ethics is that we are trying to discover ourselves. I want to understand, why am I in this world? I want to understand, why is it that I must get married? Why is it that I must get educated? These whys are very important because they give you a sense of direction. Then you know why I'm doing these things. Why should I be in this class? Or why should I, not be somewhere else? The Quran uses short and precise terms to indicate signs and road marks for the believers. At every point there is a sign. And we discover ayah means a sign. Celestial sign, the sun is the ayah, but also your blood that is circulating in you is also an ayah. So far, this is what we did. Any questions before we move on? Now we are exploring what exactly is the good character. What is it that we are supposed to be? I said if taqwa is spirituality and morality put together, then the divine purpose for human life is to develop these two important aspects of our personality. If you ask me, there's a lot of discussion about human personhood. In human rights documents, they talk about human dignity, human moral agency, but nobody was talking about any kind of spiritual connection. Human rights document is very much secular. It decides not to talk about God, decides not to talk about nature. On the other hand, Quran does talk about the rights and obligations. But what it does is that it says, okay, you can have rights, but that's tied to your responsibilities. You fulfill your responsibilities, you have rights. The document, Universal Declaration, says you just, by the very fact that you are a human being, you have rights, whether you fulfill your obligations or not. Because they were dealing with the Second World War. Second World War generated the need for the human rights because there was a lot of life destruction by the Nazis, by so many bombs and so much killing. We could not believe that Europe will go through this kind of cleansifying. It did go. After that, 1948, they sat together, they worked on human rights document. And human rights document then became a kind of extreme position from what the situation was in Second World War. Therefore, you find that there are some kinds of problems. I call them relativism, because it is relative to Europe. It is Eurocentric, because the experience is very European. You and I come from cultures where families are important, where our connections are important, our marriages are important. In this part of the world, your autonomy is more important. You are a free individual. You can do anything you want. Autonomy then leads you to look only for yourself. So it comes, what I describe in the classroom is that it is me first individualism. I don't care for you. I don't care for you. I care for myself. In other words, my interests actually trump your interests. That's not what the Quran says. That's not what the Prophet says. The Prophet says, if you spend 2 days not speaking to your brothers and sisters, then Allah removes His barakat from you. Wow! So you're fighting with your brothers, your sisters. You say, oh, I won't speak with you. And 3 days go, 1 week goes. Allah says, no. You must forgive. You must move on. You must do this. But you can't be away from your own blood relationship or your friends. You can't do that. In other words, what at the center and the heart of Abrahamic religions is human relationship. Yes.
Professor, I still want to get a little bit clarity on the title of this course, which is Spiritual Ethics.
That's right.
And you did a wonderful job clarifying last time what is spirituality, which you equated to religion or religious action guide, then morality or ethics, and then religion. So if we're studying spiritual ethics, can you help us understand the co-joining of the two? So you're saying the morality or the ethics that is informed by your relationship with God. So you must first consider your iman or your relationship with God in order to inspire the ethics. I want to understand the
No, I think I may have gone faster than I'm supposed to go tonight, but I want to make clear that you can become ethical even without belief in God, because that's part of your nature. That's what the Quran says. That you can skip from having iman, but you can't skip from not being moral. Yes.
This comes to the point where human rights is concerned, and when we live in societies where everybody doesn't belong to one religion, and there are different religions, and then everybody is, there's one aspect where you have to develop economically, and move fast, and we see the results of capitalism and the forces behind it that motivates individuals to think of themselves and the profit motives and all that. Then you see the patronage coming from the government side. Yes, we have to give rights to the people who are left behind for one reason or the other.
Mm-hmm.
So this becomes an egalitarian, concept, which is very much in line with the Quran ethics.
That's right.
So we do not have blood relationships, we do not have spiritual relationships, but we are all human beings.
Yes.
And these human beings have to be taken care of.
Right.
So it does not, human rights concept, I do understand that they do not want any religion, but it is not, it may have originated that way, but I would not like to consider it as totally foreign to the teachings of the Quran.
Right.
We have to extend beyond our own faith and,
of course,
humanity and having those people having those rights.
I fully agree with you. I have written a book on Islam and the challenge of human rights. And that book is undertaking to understand in a diverse, multicultural, multi-faith societies, how do we live? Do we insist people to believe what we believe? Do we insist that everybody should be uniformly one way? What exactly is it? I think acceptance of human moral agency is fundamental to human rights document. And that acceptance means that each person is able to make a decision about what is right from what is wrong. But what happens is that in the society, you are conditioned to think in such a way that the right becomes the wrong and wrong becomes the right. So that's where religion enters. Says, no, you cannot sacrifice right and wrong like that. You need to understand them for their own values. If you don't want to follow them, it's up to you. Nobody will force you. Because the Quran is very clear, La ikraha fid din. There will be no compulsion in the matters of religion, in the matters of law, unless you are committed to it. In other words, what the Quran is trying to tell us is that freedom of religion is the basic foundation of all human existence. The moment you don't follow freedom of religion, you will fall into what we call suppressing the religiosity of others or forcing them to become like you are becoming. Now, I don't mean to say parents have no right to do it for their children, but I'm fully supportive of the idea that the Quran is proposing freedom of religion by saying, La ikraha fid din, there will be no compulsion. And the Prophet is being told time and again, Lasta alayhim bimusaitir. You are not over them. You are not going to watch over the people. Give them the message and leave them alone. In other words, religion has to be negotiated by each individual. You don't become religious because so-and-so is religious. Yes, of course you see good examples and you become religious. That's very important to do it. But what I'm suggesting here is that human rights document did not want to entangle in the self-righteous attitudes of religion. It could not do it because it was talking to all communities. Surprisingly, you will be surprised to hear that Saudi Arabia was represented by a Christian in United Nations discussion about human rights. Jamal Baroudi was a Christian from Lebanon who represented Saudi Arabia. Can you imagine Saudi Arabia today? If Saudi is asked today, did you really send a Christian instead of a Muslim to do that? Yes, they did. They did. Lebanon itself was, Charles Malik. He was a Christian who represented the, Lebanese government. In other words, there was no understanding of who should be consulted in the matters of other religions, or the Quran or other words. But one thing that is very important to keep in mind is that morality goes beyond religion. Actually, religion starts with morality and ends up teaching religion in a moral way. So it's very important to keep in mind that spiritual ethics is the ethics that is informed by the human nature. And human nature wants to believe. Human nature is inclined to believe. As the Quran would say, وَنَفْسٍ وَمَا سَوَّاهَا فَأَلْهَمَهَا فُجُورَهَا وَتَقْوَاهَا. When we created human beings, we inform them about right and wrong. So the first education we got after our creation was to know right from the wrong. It doesn't say that we taught him to believe first and then eloped morality. Rather, spiritual ethics leads you ultimately. If you are a moral person, you will want to ask, now where did I know about it? Who told me about it? Oh, my parents told me. No, but there's something in me that says, I cannot accept children to be tortured. I cannot accept cruelty towards children. I cannot accept women being discriminated all the time. In other words, you are raising that awareness. That awareness is moral. It's moral awareness. Okay, now, so we came to this that At-Taqwa is spiritual and moral awareness. So let's move further now. Tracing the development. How do we trace the moral development? We need to know some science. We need to know some characteristics whereby you and I can feel comfortable saying that I think we are moving in the right direction. Do you get me? We are moving in the right direction. Tracing the development. Imam Ali says, Al-Iman yabdu fil qalb, nuqtatun bayda. Faith begins in the heart. And the heart in Quranic language is the mind. Shu'ur. So it begins there. How does it begin there? There's a light. It's a small dot that is light. And that light develops into more and more clarity of life. كلما أزداد الإيمان أزداد ذلك على البياض. As Iman grows, this whiteness grows, this clarity grows. Are you with me? The clarity grows with Iman. أبيض القلب كله and يبدو and فإذا استكمل العبد الإيمان أبيض القلب كله. All the heart becomes clearest as the Iman becomes perfected. So we are talking about faith. Let me tell you quite clearly, faith here simply means clarity of your understanding. Let me give you an example. Many times you do things in your life and you come to crossroads and then you find that you have failed. The failure deals a very hard blow at you. You want to find, why did I fail? I did everything. I took this course, I did these exams, I did everything. How come I did not make it? So you come to that kind of question. Why did I not make it? This is known as the frustration over failure. You become frustrated with your own being so hardworking and not seeing the result. And you become, disenchanted. What did I do wrong? Then comes your journey. It begins with self-criticism. Instead of saying, why did it happen to me? You will ask, where did I go wrong? What did I not do? Where was my weakness in my courses or in anything in your life? And the answer comes, you did not follow the leads that were coming. You were being warned that you better do this and not that. You consulted people, you knew about it, and still you did not follow, and therefore the failure. But you are not satisfied at yes. There's something that controls you. That something is self-pity. You begin to self-pity. Oh, poor me, I will never become successful. Oh, I know, I will never become good. Something like that. You are somehow imposing upon yourself a sense of failure and make it almost part of your existence. This is when you need clarity. You need an-nur. Our Sufi masters, our Sufis, mystical leaders used to say that you move on the path in order for you to reach the truth. The moment you reach the truth, the clarity opens in front of you. You become clear about your goals. And many times part of our modern problem is that we are too much distracted. So we don't know where the truth is. I think what Imam Ali is teaching is وَإِنَّ نِفَاقَ يَبْدُ فِي الْقَلْبِ نُقْتَةٌ سَوْدَاء. Quite to the opposite. Imam is not saying Iman and Kufr. See, Kufr is spared. That means non-belief is not being discussed. What is being discussed is hypocrisy, pretension of faith. When does the pretension begin? When do people begin to pretend that they are religious, to show people, to get their approval? When do they do this? When there is a small dot in their mind which is black in color. And this is controlling them the way they should be seeing the light. They are not able to see it. So, كُلَّمَا أَزْدَادَ النِّفَاقَ أَزْدَادَ ذَلِكَ السَّوْدَاء. As much as hypocrisy increases, the blackness increases. Until the blackness becomes controlling of everything, and that's the time when a person is completely hypocritical. And the Prophet ﷺ was asked, what is the difference? What is ikhlas, sincerity? He said, where your inner life and outer life are the same. So you're not pretending something you are not. In other words, pretension is always a problem in religion. And ethics somehow stops you from doing that. Because what you need to prove is objectively. Yes, I'm a believer. But if you saw me lying, if you saw me misbehaving, what would you say? What kind of belief he has? He doesn't have a belief. How you are not able to judge? Because you say objectively I can see his actions. I don't see the actions properly. And therefore there's a problem. Yes.
And really, we are facing very tough times, and you see around you, if you have a class and people around you do not have a class, and your success depends on diplomacy, and I've seen people around you all the time, they have one opinion about a person, but when they're diplomatic, they just praise that person, and they move up in the ladder, and they achieve certain worldly gains.
Yeah.
Now here is a person who may have a class, and following those principles doesn't find that success and cannot. When you internalize what's wrong with you basically realize that no, it's not wrong with you. The person of class would say it's not wrong with you, it's wrong with the system.
Yeah, I fully appreciate your concern that sometimes the outward life and the inward life are in conflict. Because you are required to be something to someone. And sometimes you become everything to everyone, which is a defeat of your own principles. You can't be like that. You can never be like that. If you are like that, then you have lost the spiritual connection. I'm afraid that there is no way to endorse diplomacy which leads to hypocrisy. Because hypocrisy is the greatest enemy of your moral behavior. Morality is always to be judged. Always to be judged, no exception. Morality must always be judged in a way in which you don't leave any opening for hypocrisy to come in. Otherwise it's not moral. So in Farsi we have Durugh maslahat amiz beh az rast fitna angiz. Saadi says, you can tell lies, maslahat angiz. Because this is maslaha, this is in your interest to tell a lie. Saadi's advice would lead you to what Immanuel Kant would say, a sacrifice of imperative, a sacrifice of a principle. If you do that, if you be everything to everyone, then you don't have a path. What you are searching for is an anchor, a proper anchor. And your anchor is in the awareness of your responsibility. Am I responsible or not? Am I to feign my piety, by doing things? And I think the most damaging aspect of human religiosity is to become hypocritical. It's very dangerous. Even in morality, I think there comes a time, I mentioned last time Ammar Yasir, did I not? That he had to somehow, reject Tawheed for a while, and the Quran came to its defense. No, he was okay because his life was in danger. Ammar Yasir was being killed, and they were torturing him. The Quraysh were doing it. And if he had not done it to save himself, they had already killed his mother, Sumayya. So here was the question of Ammar, should I save myself for something better? Otherwise they will kill me. And he did. And the Quran said, in that circumstance, it was okay to do it. So we also are faced. I met Albright, the foreign secretary under, I think, Clinton, Madeleine Albright, So you go and you sit on the table with them, and then you are asked about things, and you are not telling the truth because you are afraid that you might be isolated. You might be a dissenting voice. And you do have a dissenting voice because you know quite well that ethics demands you better tell the truth. And yet, you're not able to do that. And I still remember that I told my teacher, my spiritual teacher, that I did something that was not appropriate for me to do. I said something that I should not have said. I misled the whole group, so to speak, by my hypocrisy. He told me, you have already been forgiven because you are remembering what you did. Otherwise you would not remember. If you were completely controlled by it, you would not remember the error you did. In other words, there are times when you are warned. I'm talking about, I'm moving quite in a different direction than I proposed to do, but let's try to remain within, what happened to this? So this is a different, I see. I'm sorry about it. Ah, yes. Oh dear. I don't want you anymore. I don't need you. I'm sorry about it. I thought I had already checked everything, and here I find myself struggling with it. Oh, okay. Yes. I don't know why it's... there it is. She's not able to bring it up. It's a lesson, because everything is controlled by the internet and I'm not able to connect it. There we have. Let's see if I can open this one. There it is. Lecture 2. Yeah, okay, that's where I am. I'm sorry. Yeah. Okay. I was going to discuss the pillars of ethics today. So let's try to understand one thing. Muslims believed in two different theories of ethics. It's good for us to know that one of the theory of the ethics was based on religious faith, and it says you know the right from the wrong only if you refer to the Quran and the Sunnah. In other words, they believed in divine command ethics. If God commands you, do it. If God stops you, don't do it. That's one theory. That required as a precondition to be a Muslim. You need to be a Muslim in order for you to know what is right from wrong. Iman is shart, is a requirement. But then you have another group, quite well known, and they believe that God has created you with infused morality. You can be a believer, a non-believer, whatever you want to be, but you can never escape moral judgment. And both are, by the way, known among the Sunnis. Divine command ethics or, rationalist ethics, they both are among the Sunnis. I must say that divine command ethics is a majority of the Sunni people. But for a minority, they believed in rationalism. They said human reason is capable of knowing right from wrong. In other words, human beings do not need all the time to refer to the religion in order for them to know right and wrong. Let me put it this way. Even without religion, you can be a good person. Do you get this? It's a very major statement. You don't have to be religious in order for you to be good. And you don't have to be religious in order for you to be judged whether you're good or bad. Because it's given as part of your infused nature, fitra. Fitrat al-salim, as we say. This is the fitra that is very pure. It's well guided. But there's fitra, this fitra sometimes gets confused. So your nature is not protected. It is sometimes controlled by your social habits. Social habits are interfering. And you go through that. In that case then, ethical knowledge is conscientious knowledge when you are rationalist in that sense. But if you are a traditionalist, like majority of the Ahlul Sunnah wal Jama'ah are, then you would believe that ethics is only that which the Quran teaches. But the Quran is saying that no, I teach you ethics and you also learn ethics because you've been created with a nature. So the Quran is trying to support what I support in my book, in Islam and human rights. That human rights, even if you don't believe in God, even if you don't believe in nature, you still need to abide by a very common sense understanding of human decency. The human beings are by nature decent. By nature they are good. It's only the society that moves them, makes them, one way or the other. Does it make sense to you?
Yes, but Quran has been sent in order to help mankind face the challenge of ethics and morality when humans get challenged. In case of revenge, for example.
In the case of?
Revenge.
Yes.
If I do bad to you all the time, and you can't stay good all the time, but then, there is peace coming from God that, of course, you have the right to attack me, but then, if you just, stay away, he would reward you.
Yeah.
So how would you?
Again, I think we are moving away from the topic that I am covering.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, because I know that question is important. The Quran teaches us, even in the surah where it talks about retributive justice, retribution, it is still trying to say that it's better for you not to engage in retribution. You better not do it. Victim will be always rewarded. So victim need not seek revenge. Victim can also forgive. Because, for example, monetary compensation was unknown in the Arab tribal culture because it was a weakness. If I accepted, somebody killed my father, I must kill his father. That's what the law of retribution, say eye for an eye, tooth for a tooth. That means I do that. But at the same time, the Quran introduces compensation there. Compensation is where you don't engage in endless violence. Because the Quran knew human beings will keep on killing each other. Generation after generation, the Prophet knew that the tribes were fighting with each other. So the Quran came to put moral conditions that you can't do that forever and ever. You have to start forgiving, you have to start accepting monetary compensation. So if I kill your father, then, in turn, I can give you 40 camels, or so much money, or so much, In other words, it was compensatory. So that's another aspect. What I'm talking about is, the Quran wants us to understand ethics as a universal language for all human beings. Regardless of what religion they follow, they must abide by the ethical and moral principles. Example, freedom of religion. You cannot force somebody to become religious. That's not good. It's never going to work. That's going to create a hypocrite. Whereas the Quran is trying to teach us that Iman should be negotiated between person and God. And they should willingly accept it. And therefore, the Prophet was told, you're not wakil over them. You're not to force them. Why are you doing that? In other words, he made quite clear, the Quran made quite clear that what we want to see human beings to do is to excel in morality. Tazakki. Tazakki means to excel in morality, to become morally sound. How do you become morally sound without religion? I asked you that question. Can you be good without religion? Can you be moral without religion? My answer is yes. But majority would say no. You need Iman before you become, a morally sound person. But that's the difference of understanding of the epistemology. How do we know what is right from what is wrong? Is it only the revelation that tells us? Or is it human reason also that tells us? There are two sources. So our epistemic knowledge about good and bad is given by the Quran and also by the reason. And these two are working together rather than separately.
Could one argue that human beings needed scripture a long time ago because they were infant in their development as a human being? So, for example, people who buried their daughters, it's hard to go back and say, did they feel a sense of guilt in their conscience as a result of doing it? Or were they so ignorant of that action that although they had the infusion of what is good and bad, that the human experience wasn't developed enough to tell them that it's wrong? So I'm with you. I'm with you that you can be good without religion. I'm only adding a reason why there may not be a strict need for scripture anymore, because we as human beings collectively have gone through a human experience where we know that burying a daughter is a bad thing.
But I'm not saying that. I'm not saying that we don't need scripture.
No. I guess what I'm saying is I'm taking your second school of thought, which is that I think
rationality.
I'll be very frank with you. I have met a lot of brothers and sisters who, like you said, if things are not in the Sunnah and the Quran, then they cannot have a conversation.
That's right.
And I find that actually an insult to the human intellect.
That's right. Yes.
Because they search so much. What did the Prophet do?
Yes.
What did he brush his teeth with? And if I brush my teeth with the same thing, I might achieve it.
Yes.
Where we've lost that actually the sacredness of the human being is already in you.
That's
God already exists. His light already exists in you.
Let me. I understand fully where you are coming from. I'm not suggesting. I'm going to draw my larger conclusion. What I have said about the sources of ethical knowledge. Ethical knowledge, according to the Quran, is infused in human nature. If human nature was not given that, then there would be no responsibility on all human beings, regardless of their religious background, are responsible for their moral behavior. The Quran is adamant about universal language of morality. It says, we have given moral values to everyone. It's up to you to find out what values you have been born with. Now, the society might interfere with it, might not let you develop those values in you, but that's fine. The other thing that the Quran is teaching us is that the prophets are also the source of ethical knowledge. You cannot have ethical knowledge without the exemplar in front of you. The Prophet was a full exemplar of Insanul Kamil, of a human being who was perfect. And as such, we were asked to do the ta'assi, means to follow him. Ati'ullah wa ati'ur rasul ulil amri minkum. Ati'ullah, God's, obedience was required, but also the obedience of the Prophet was required. What do you obey Prophet in? What he does, you do it. This is the Sunnah. In other words, Sunnah is not written down. Sunnah comes by studying the Prophet's life. That's where you learn about the Sunnah, not what we read in the books that were collected after 200 years, 300 years. What we know about the life of the Prophet is the Quran itself. The Quran is a dialogue between the Prophet and the people. The people are asking the Prophet, like you are talking to me, he was doing the same thing. The Quran is actually totally the conversation between Prophet and others in the community. Step by step you learn that the Prophet is talking to some, yas'alunaka, they're asking you so and so, tell them so and so. In other words, the Quran is saying that in order for you to understand me, you will need the Prophet. You can't understand me without the Prophet. And you must remember something, brothers and sisters. The Quran in the book shape was not available in those days. The Quran was not written down in a book form and in every hand. No, the Quran was the Prophet. People look at the Prophet and said, here's the Quran. I'll read something very interesting to you. This is my book, by the way. I have this in my, it's part of the chapter. But look at this hadith from Sayyida Aisha. This is very important to keep in mind, because she, as the wife of the Prophet, knew the Prophet very well. Of all the people, and she was an intelligent woman who observed the Prophet, who knew the Prophet's anger, happiness, everything. Look, Sayyid bin Hisham comes and asks her, أخبريني عن خلق رسول الله. Tell me about the ethics, the morality of the Prophet, his creation, his character. Can you imagine somebody asking you, tell me the Prophet's, character? How would you describe that? How would you do that? And look at what she says. قالت ألست تقرأ القرآن? Haven't you read the Quran? Haven't you read the Quran? فَإِنَّهُ كَانَ خُلْقَ النَّبِيِّ. The Quran is the character of the Prophet. So you want to understand the Prophet, you have to understand the Quran. You want to understand the Quran, you have to understand the Prophet. They are interconnected. So you can't do without the Prophet. You can't do without the revelation. What we are looking at is, revelation cannot speak for itself. No book can speak for itself. You need someone to talk about it. We need someone to explain it, someone to interpret it. And this is where the science and scholarship comes in. We have great scholars who are studying the Quran, who are commenting on the verses of the Quran. But remember something, that the first type of reference to the understanding of the Quran was the Prophet himself. Because this community, this early community, they saw the Prophet only. They did not see the Quran. They heard the Quran. They saw the Prophet practicing the Quran. This is very important to keep in mind, that there was no book that you and I can open and say, hey, let's read it. There was no such literacy in those days. Only few knew how to read and write. You remember what the Prophet did when he went to Badr? As part of the negotiation with Ahl al-Makkah, because he defeated them. Said, okay, we are taking your prisoners. And each prisoner was given a choice. You teach among us people how to read and write in the Muslim community. This was something very remarkable about a leader in the 7th century. In a culture which was an oral culture. It was not a written culture. People were not reading books. No. It was not a book culture in that sense. Islam became a book civilization later on with the importance of the book. But otherwise, at that time, it was a culture which was expressed orally. And I think that what Aisha radiallahu anha is trying to say is this, that you will never be able to understand the Prophet if you don't understand the Quran. It's as clear as that. Where she's saying, haven't you read Surah Al-Mu'mineen? And she recited first 10 ayahs, قَدْ أَفْلَحَ الْمُؤْمِنُونَ الَّذِينَ. This is, by the way, one of the most beautiful surahs. And the first 10 ayah is actually describing the Prophet. And she said, read it. She told Hisham, Sa'd ibn Hisham said, go and read it. And she started reading it for him. She read the first 10 ayahs, said, haven't you read this? She was like a mother, you know. She said, haven't you read this? And this is what we discover. And therefore I'm saying, if you heard me differently, I think both the groups, the rationalists and the traditionalists, depended on the Quran. If you read their books, they are referring to the Quran. They are talking about the Quran. But what they are talking about is the ethical knowledge. Where do you get the ethical knowledge from? Only from the revelation or from the reason? Or is it a mix of both? What they came up with is very interesting. كُلَّمَا حَكَمَ بِهِ الْعَقْلُ حَكَمَ بِهِ الشَّرْعُ. Anything that human being has understood rationally is also supported by the revelation. In other words, if you are a reasonable person, if you think correctly, you will find that the Quran is also talking to you in the same language. So, knowledge of the self, self-understanding is extremely important in the adoption of what we call spiritual ethics. Now look at this slide. The abundance of ethics is the secret of livelihood. In practical terms, your morality is going to guarantee your livelihood. Arzaq, rizq. If you are moral, God will not abandon you. No, this is what it said. The leader of ethics is spiritual and moral awareness, at-tuqa. Good character ethics is founded upon 3 values and 4 pillars. Let's look at them very quickly. 3 values are beauty, I mentioned the jamal, good, khair, and truth, haq. These are 3 values. They lead you, these values are important for you to become morally up to date, morally sound. But let's look at the pillars. The first pillar. And the Quran is replete with it. As-sabru miftahul faraj. Sabirin alladhina, these are the ones who are, sabr. Patience is ability to control anger and capacity to forgive. Capacity to forgive. Ability to abstain from hurting someone. That's sabr, by the way. Capacity to practice self-control without thoughtlessness and superficiality. Without haste. See how differently sabr is understood in religion. These are the moral teachers, This is how the Prophet taught. That sabr is to be perseverant. To be able to stand and withstand the challenges of life. That's sabr. I'm angry, but I will not show my anger. I'll try to be cool. I'm strong, I can take a revenge. I'm not going to do it. All these things are part of it. Can you imagine as a pillar? This is where you build your morality. Your moral foundation is made up of these pillars. So first pillar is ability to control anger and capacity to forgive. Second pillar is modesty. Wow, modern society, will have to, be awakened somehow, There is very little care about it. There's very little, emphasis on it. So modesty, ability to abstain from vices and evilness in talk and deed. Surah Mu'minun that Aisha is reading has the second ayah, Alladhinahum, anil laghwi mu'ridun. They don't engage in, stupid talk. They don't sit and waste their time, okay? So here is from vices and evilness in talk and deed, leading to chastity, iffa, which is the fountain of all good, guiding to stop from shamelessness, miserliness, lies, gossiping, and slandering. Something that we commonly find. I sometimes sit in the Department of Religious Studies and I hear people, gossiping, it's so common disease in the human beings, you try to talk ill of somebody else. Whenever you say, oh, did you see Ali today? Oh, that fellow, I don't like him. What happened? We're always negative about anybody. We start with negatives, then we come to positive. What we are being told is that all this is part of iffa. By the way, modesty also means modesty in eating, modesty in dressing, modesty in enjoying the life. Everything requires iffa. And iffa is, afif is the one who knows how to live in moderation. Everything has to be in moderation. The third pillar. This is the spiritual ethics. Shuja'ah. Shuja'ah is equal to self-respect. Izzatun nafs. Allahu Akbar. Izzatun nafs. To respect yourself. To know that you're not going to do this. It's not your station or your stature to do it. Ability to be generous and in possession of a character that is able to do away with what one likes in order to gain the discipline. To gain the discipline. As per the Prophet's guidance, bravery is not in knocking someone down. Rather, it is self-control at the time when one is in rage. That's Shuja'ah. Have you heard about the story of Rumi? I haven't seen the riwayah, but Rumi talks about one of the battles of Ali and, another champion in the Arab tribal society. And, that man was so strong that I think it was the battle of Khaybar, I think, I'm not sure. But one of those battles when Ali had to face this man who was very strong. Ibn Abd Wab, something like Ibn Abd Wud, I think is the person. Rumi gives the story, by the way. And he says, look, he threw the enemy down and the enemy was about to kill him. Ali was about to kill the enemy and the enemy spitted against Ali. And Ali got up. I'm not going to kill you. So if he had killed him, he would have killed him for his anger. That's what Maulana tells us. That the moral of the story was that if he had killed him, then he would have killed him out of his anger, not for the sake of God. Not that he was the enemy of God, he would have killed him. Then he draws a beautiful line. As Ali amuz ikhlas amal. As Ali amuz ikhlas amal, shir khuda ra dan munazzah az daghal. That's what Ali did. You want to learn sincerity? You go and learn it from Ali. And you must know that this Lion of God was not cheating anyone. See the ethics, how it's playing out? He was not cheating anyone. Dagal, dagal baz nabud. Means, he was not, claiming things and charlatan, behavior. Said, no, he wasn't there. That's the third pillar. Finally, the fourth pillar is the most difficult one, my friends. It's very difficult. Justice, easily said. Easily said. Avoiding of extremes in one's character. Extremes in one's character. How do you do it? Taking a extreme position in any matter that leads to the tilting of the balance of fairness. So fairness is a balance that you want to keep the mizan properly and not overburden one or the other side. In order for you to make a judgment, you need to be that way. When we go to the extreme, either we do the takfir or we do, I don't know, we don't know how to maintain the inner balance. The scale is there. Avoiding cowardice and recklessness. Adopting gentleness, which is between losing one's temper and complete silence. Sometimes you can't keep silent. You have to say things. At other times, you just swallow your pride and say, okay, I won't say anything. In other words, there is something that you are constantly asked to do. In other words, the four pillars are well founded for anybody. This is what I call the universal language of Islam. It applies to all. Do you think it applies only to the Muslims? All the characteristics, it applies to everyone. All human beings ought to show bravery. All human beings ought to show patience. Justice is the most difficult one because it's very hard to speak up the truth where it is necessary. Because if you don't speak up the truth, then you are being unjust. This is the ayah of amana in the Quran. The ayah of amana says, إِنَّ أَرَدْنَا الْأَمَانَةَ لَلسَّمَاوَاتِ وَالْأَرْضِ وَالْجِبَالِ أَشْفَقْنَا مِنْهَا فَحَمَلَ الْإِنسَانُ إِنَّهُ كَانَ ظَلُومًا جَهُولًا. Human beings are prone to be unjust. You always go to the extremes. And human beings must teach themselves that no, this is where discipline comes in Zabat. Discipline is where you teach yourself how to control your extreme positions. Is this? I have 15 minutes, now you can ask me more questions. Yes. Yeah. In other words, what we are doing here is that I just want to conclude this section by emphasizing something, that ethics will not survive without universal language. There is no way for ethics to survive if it cannot touch fellow human beings. When I go to United Nations Human Rights Commission, I asked very clearly that if we cannot condemn wrongdoing in any part of the world, then we are not fit to be part of the commission. We are not. It could be in one of the Muslim countries. It could be one of the Muslim leaders who is doing that, who is misbehaving. We have to speak up. In other words, there is no way out that you can keep aloof and silent. And this is the test that every day we go through. It's not easy to recognize that we are being unjust. The Quran uses the word zaloom. Zaloom means we are in darkness. If we don't do the right things in the right time, then we are in the darkness. We are not following the light. The light is telling us to go towards justice. And therefore, you have, our leaders, the Khulafa al-Rashidun, when it came to justice, they were very strict even over themselves. They said, no, we will not allow this. Injustices would not be allowed. Today, we close our eyes. How many of us, know how people are suffering? And I'm not saying this about the politics of the situation. When you talk about the rights of the, Palestinians We must remember there are also Syrians who have the same right. Also, there are other communities whose rights are being destroyed. Also, there are women, there are children. And if we don't say anything about it, then we are participant in the injustices. Do you see what's happened? This our Mufassirun, they tell us, by the way. When zulm happens, when wrong happens, and you don't say anything, you are participant. You will be looked as the one who is endorsing the wrongdoing. Whereas what spiritual ethics is going to teach you is that, no, your remaining indifferent is going to cost you spiritually. You will become blind spiritually. What you need to maintain is what did I say about spirituality? Remembering that God is watching over everything we do. You know about the two angels. I always talk to them. They are my friends because they keep me alert. They say, no, this is extreme. No, this is extreme. In other words, these two angels are a reality. These are the two parts of our conscience. They're talking to us. They whisper to us. They tell us when we are right and when we are wrong. That's what these angels do. For whatever reason God created them and put them on our shoulder, what it simply means is that we need to be divinely conscious. Are we God conscious? Do we remember the divine? In what sense we remember the divine? Because many times we forget our connection to the divine. That's why we approach matters in a very different way, and we do a lot of injustice by doing so. But if you keep Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in front of you, then you become ethically strong and religiously strong. I'm talking about two strengths. And I think the Prophet is right when he says, Man arafa nafsuhu faqad arafa rabbahu. The one who knows himself knows his Creator. He knows his Creator because the more you know yourself, the more you understand your weaknesses and your strengths, the more you realize what a kind of person God created you. Isn't that true? Instead of, staying at home and not, watching the TV, we are here. It requires sharafun nafs to be here, by the way. You are doing something very special. And I'm very grateful to all of you for being here, because what it means is that we all are thirsty to open the Quran in a way that is necessary to do it today. Don't you think? We want to see the Quran guiding us and telling us what we should be doing. And I think that we are fortunate. I'm telling you, the more you read the Quran, the more you understand the Prophet. And the more you understand the Prophet, the more you want to greet him, Assalamu alayka ya amina wahyillah. The best aspect of the Prophet's life was to preserve the Quran. If he had not preserved the Quran, what would have happened to us? There's only one text in the world which is claimed to be the original. I asked my colleagues in biblical studies, do you know the language Jesus spoke? So we know he spoke Aramaic and Syriac, but we don't know. So they are depending on the Greek Bible as the source, which has already gone through one translation, through one cultural transmission. So by the time it comes to English and French and German, it has already gone through several hands. Therefore, I don't like when Muslims read the English Quran and they fight with one another. That's not the way to do it. Oh, this is what I read in the Quran. Oh, no, you haven't read everything. You need to read the Arabic in order for you to really appreciate what things are being said. Well, thank you very much for your attention. We'll see you next week, inshallah. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Any questions? Yes.
Just two clarifications.
Yes.
The first is the definition of bravery was self-respect, but I didn't quite understand that. That was one. Like that word that you used, the first word was self-respect as bravery. I've never really made that connection before. And then the second was, you mentioned that the rationalists and the traditionalists ultimately came to alignment that the Quran is informed by reason. Is that right?
The second
that the rationalists and traditionalists, they
Yes.
ultimately came to alignment that the Quran is informed by reason?
No, no. The Quran and reason are compatible with one another.
But does that mean that everything in the Quran can be understood through reason?
Reason was there before the Quran came. Reason is prior to the Quran. And the Quran came in the history in the 7th century, reason was there. But reason was absconded, reason was hijacked by human beings by their own self-interest. The Quran brought the reason back to its own bearings.
But isn't Iman necessarily that there are some things that you believe in that you cannot rationalize? Like there's
No.
judgment.
Oh my goodness, that will be terrible. The Prophet ﷺ said, كُلَّمَا دَخَلَ بِالدِّينِ بِعَقْلِ قَدْ بَقِيَ عَلَى دِينِ بِعَقْلِ. Anybody who enters his religion rationally will remain in that religion for a long time. No, rationality is, what we don't want to do is to become arrogant. Because reason can be very arrogant. You should look at the students in my class, by the way. They are arrogant. They're just doing their BA, first year, second year, third year. But when it comes to their own mind, I don't mind them speaking, but I do realize there's a lot of arrogance in the modern culture. Modernity does generate arrogance because we are, especially in this part of the world, we are better taken care of. We seem to be doing well, alhamdulillah, there's nothing wrong in that. But it becomes that. Your first question was? Bravery. Self-respect, by the way, if you insult me, there are two things open for me. I should return your insult with another insult of mine. Or I can remain patient and I say, it doesn't matter, I still remain firm in what I am. That's izzatun nafs. And that's shuja'. Shuja' is not always with swords and lances or with guns. Shuja' is your ability not to give up your self-dignity under difficult circumstances. I will never beg for food. That's what the Prophet taught. You don't beg for food. You can ask for water, but you can't ask for food because it pulls down your izzatun nafs. It takes you down. When you say, I don't have food, you can say, I don't have water. Can you give me some water? I can knock any door and drink water, but I should not knock the door to say, can you feed me? It wouldn't work. It is attack izzatun nafs. Izzah, by the way, is the power. Al-Aziz, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is Aziz, means He is powerful. He is able to do anything He decides. وَتُعِزُّ مَن تَشَاءُ وَتُذِلُّ مَن تَشَاءُ بِيَدِهِ الْخَيْرُ وَهُوَ عَلَى كُلِّ شَيْءٍ قَدِيرٌ وَتُعِزُّ مَن تَشَاءُ. Allah brings up anybody, puts him up with the self-respect. And He can throw down someone, but whatever He does good. He doesn't do zulm. So you can see self-respect is very much part of the bravery. You really sometimes need to be brave to uphold your beliefs in front of all the attacks. There were times when I was a teacher after the 9/11, it was hard to speak in the classrooms. You were attacked. Your students would attack you. There were, Christians for crusades or somebody like that, They would take your course in order to insult you. They would ask you about all the things. They would ask about jihad, about, ta'addud azwaj, how many wives the Prophet had, all those things, so that we should look down upon our religion. I used to get videos from the Christian groups that you better become a Christian. At 9/11 was quite an interesting period. I should write a book about that what happened to us as teachers. It was a very different dynamics.
Has it subsided?
No, I think it has improved because we stayed firm in what we teach. I still teach jihad and peace. I teach it the way it should be taught, from the Quran, from the ethics, from the, point of view of our scholars who knew what it was like. Tabari, Tabarsi, all of them. In other words, no, I think I was frightened in the early days. I still remember I was frightened. I said, I don't know, should I go to this conference or not? There was a conference in New York about tolerance, and I said, no, I better not go, because they will ask me what kind of tolerance Islam teaches. And I was afraid. But then I regained Izzatun Nafs. I said, no, I'm not wrong. I didn't do anything wrong. If they did, doesn't mean that I should be condemned for their wrongdoing. So I think that it comes with Izzatun Nafs. You must learn to respect yourself. That's the key to your discipline, by the way. So when you're in the school and you don't do well, for example, you get a C or a D, it's a question of Izzatun Nafs. How did I get a C or D? I should be the one to get A. This is Izzatun Nafs. This is the self-respect that you are following. I think it's very important all the time to... They say it's prayer, قُلِ اللَّهُمَّ مَالِكَ الْمُلْكِ تُؤْتِ الْمُلْكَ. This is the surah, this is the ayah you should read every day. Have you heard this? Ayatul Kursi, and Aman al-Rasul bima unzala. You should read Shahid Allah and all these 4 things, in Surah Al-Baqarah and Al Imran. You should read them constantly. I think the secret is that they give you Izzatun Nafs. They make you strong. It's not easy. One day I will tell you my life story and you will say, oh my God, how can it be possible that you can be a professor in University of, Virginia or GMU? Because I come from a very poor family. I would have never been educated. I was not from the rich family. And students in those days in Tanzania, the poor ones went to India. The rich ones went to England. I was among the poor ones who went to India to study. But it was not bad. I studied. India was good for me. I learned to be strong. I learned to be, very sabir. All of these things I learned. And I was a good horse rider. I used to be, racing with other students, on the horses. And the vice chancellor would come and go with us horse riding. So already I found that I was being prepared for something much stronger. So when I was denied admission in University of Toronto, that day when I received that letter, I cried. Because I tried very hard to keep up my grades and everything. Well, I think there was a question mark, not the denial. We don't know this student. What will he do? And the moment I got into the university, things changed. Because then they knew me, who I was. Many a times we judge people in absentia. We don't even know them. But when we see them, we learn about them, we learn to respect them and ourselves. That's what I call the spirituality. Are you with me? That's the spiritual strength. You can become extremely strong, like, you can move mountains, as we say, if you are able to do that. Thank you for listening to extra, narratives.
We enjoyed it.
Yes.
So, I'm going tonight to make peace with a loved one.
Yes.
I would, it's a request that if you can make a dua for me, a group prayer.
Inshallah, Ya Rabbi, help us all, I think we should always pray what the Prophet ﷺ prayed. قُلْ رَبِّ ارْحَمْ رَبِّ اغْفِرْ وَارْحَمْ أَنْتَ خَيْرُ الرَّاحِمِينَ. Ya Allah, help us, forgive us, and be kind to us. You are the kindest among all the kind, So, and this is what the Prophet was told. قُلْ, O Muhammad, say, رَبِّ اغْفِرْ وَارْحَمْ أَنْتَ خَيْرُ الرَّاحِمِينَ. I think we should always say, رَبِّ اغْفِرْ وَارْحَمْ أَنْتَ خَيْرُ الرَّاحِمِينَ. We need to generate compassion. But we can do it only when we are forgiven. We fall short on many occasions. So we really need to work hard. Thank you very much for being here.
Yeah.